The night pressed against the walls of Daniel's small apartment, silence broken by the shrill buzz of his old phone. He hesitated before pressing play on the voicemail. A trembling voice whispered, "They know where you are." The words ended with static, and Daniel's pulse surged. His eyes darted around the dim room, searching for comfort that wasn't there. Then a piercing scream echoed from the street outside, sharp and human, vanishing into silence as quickly as it came. Daniel rushed to the window, scanning the empty alley, only to spot a small object on the cracked pavement below. He stepped into the cold night air and approached. It was an antique pocket watch, impossibly pristine, its surface etched with strange, unreadable symbols that seemed to shift under the dim glow of the street lamp. Daniel said, "What the hell is this?" His voice quivered, the night holding its breath. Daniel gripped the pocket watch tighter as silence pressed around him. His thoughts raced, torn between discarding it and keeping it close. He muttered, "This doesn't belong here." The air was too still, the silence unnatural, like the world waited. His breath clouded the night as he turned back toward his apartment. Just as he reached the stairwell, a faint whisper slid across his ear. "Lost souls roam." Daniel spun, heart pounding, but the alley was empty. He stood frozen, every instinct urging him to flee, yet his feet rooted to the cracked concrete. The pocket watch ticked once, sharp and audible, though its hands didn't move. Daniel stumbled back into his apartment, slamming the door behind him. He leaned against the wall, chest heaving, as silence returned like a blanket. His phone buzzed again, screen lighting up with the same unknown number. He whispered, "No, not again." Trembling, he pressed play. This time the voice whispered slower, "They're waiting in the dark." Daniel threw the phone on the couch, clutching his head. A sudden crash echoed from his kitchen, glass shattering. He froze, fear crawling along his skin. The pocket watch ticked again in his palm, louder now, as though it responded to the sound. Daniel crept toward the kitchen, each step deliberate, his ears straining for movement. He whispered, "Hello?" His voice cracked in the silence. Broken shards of glass glittered on the tile, the air carrying a faint metallic tang. His eyes locked on the sink, where the faucet dripped slowly, though he hadn't used it in hours. Then from the shadows near the fridge, he thought he saw a figure flicker, pale, translucent, gone in a blink. Daniel's heart slammed. "No, I'm seeing things," he said, though the words offered no comfort. The pocket watch pulsed warm against his palm. Daniel dropped to his knees, sweeping broken glass aside, desperate to find evidence of what he thought he saw. The pocket watch slipped from his grip and landed with a sharp clang. Its cover creaked open on its own, revealing a reflection inside, not his own face, but that of a young woman, her eyes hollow, lips trembling as though she were screaming without sound. Daniel recoiled, fear twisting his gut. "Who are you?" he asked in a trembling whisper. The reflection faded, leaving only the unmoving hands of the watch. Daniel sat frozen, dread settling deeper with every breath. Daniel walked down the empty street, the pocket watch heavy in his palm, as if it pulled him forward. The night air clung to his skin, colder with every step. His mind screamed to turn back, but something deeper urged him on. Ahead, the gates of the asylum loomed, rusted iron twisted like jagged teeth. The building rose behind them, windows shattered, its walls streaked with rot. Daniel whispered, "Why here?" His chest tightened, fear battling curiosity. A faint flicker glowed in one window, vanishing before he could focus. The silence deepened, carrying the weight of years gone by, and Daniel knew the asylum was waiting for him. Daniel pressed his hand against the rusted gate, its metal groaning as it shifted open. The air carried a stench of mildew and dust, thick and suffocating. He muttered, "This place should have stayed buried." His steps echoed on cracked stone, each one louder than it should have been. Inside the courtyard, weeds sprouted high between broken tiles, a fountain long dry and crumbling at its center. From the shadows near the asylum entrance, Daniel swore he saw movement. But when he blinked, nothing remained. He clutched the pocket watch tighter, its surface pulsing faintly with warmth. Daniel stepped into the asylum's foyer, his footsteps muffled on dust-coated tiles. The grand entrance was ruined, chandeliers hanging crooked, paint peeling in strips from the walls. A damp chill wrapped around him. He whispered, "Feels like it never left them." His gaze drifted to the staircase ahead, its railings splintered, shadows gathering on the landing. The faint creak of floorboards above made him freeze. His heart hammered as he held the pocket watch up, its symbols faintly glowing. Somewhere deeper, a faint hum rose, like voices speaking too low to hear. Daniel's breath fogged as he ascended the staircase, wood groaning under his steps. The silence broke with a faint whisper, one that seemed to brush against his ear. "Keep going." He spun, eyes darting, but the hallway behind him remained empty. His voice cracked as he said, "Who's there?" The glow from the pocket watch grew brighter, as though guiding him. Ahead, a long corridor stretched, doors ajar on either side. The smell of mold and rot pressed closer, suffocating. From one of the rooms, a shadow shifted, and Daniel's blood ran cold. Daniel entered the corridor, every step echoing down the hollow hall. The air felt thick, each breath like swallowing dust. His gaze locked on the nearest door, its wood splintered, paint flaking. He pushed it open, revealing a room lined with rusted hospital beds, mattresses rotted and collapsed. Against the far wall, words were scrawled in red across the plaster. "They never left." Daniel whispered, "God help me." Behind him, the faint sound of footsteps echoed, though the corridor was empty. The pocket watch ticked once, louder than ever, vibrating in his grip. Daniel's eyes swept the ward as whispers curled from the corners, too faint to decipher yet too close to ignore. The rusted beds seemed to lean inward, like skeletal frames reaching for him. He muttered, "This is wrong." The pocket watch pulsed again, casting an eerie glow across the ruined room. A sound like sobbing drifted from under one of the collapsed beds. Daniel crouched slowly, heart racing, but found only shadows and dust. When he stood, he caught sight of a journal on a nightstand, its leather cracked with age, pages yellowed. He reached for it, trembling. Daniel opened the brittle journal, its pages crumbling at the edges. The handwriting inside was frantic, uneven lines scribbled with shaking hands. The words spoke of endless nights, faces in the dark, and souls trapped beneath. Daniel whispered, these were their final thoughts. His chest tightened as he turned another page, revealing a crude sketch of the asylum with symbols etched along the walls. The same markings carved into the pocket watch. A chill cut through him, deeper than the cold. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the hallway, making him flinch. Daniel hurried into the hallway, clutching the journal, his footsteps echoing louder than before. At the far end, a figure flickered, a woman, pale and gaunt, wearing a tattered hospital gown, her eyes hollow. He froze, his throat dry. "Who are you?" he whispered, though the words scraped his lips. The figure turned her head slightly, then vanished as if ripped from reality. Daniel's heart pounded in his ears. The pocket watch ticked sharply, and the journal in his hand trembled. He felt the asylum wasn't showing him visions, but its truths. Daniel pressed himself against the wall, breath ragged, eyes fixed on the empty hallway where she vanished. A door creaked nearby, slow and deliberate, its hinges crying out in protest. Daniel whispered, "Dawn," but his body moved toward it. He pushed the door open, revealing a therapy room in ruins, chairs overturned, broken restraints dangling from the walls. A broken mirror leaned against the far side, its glass cracked in jagged lines. In the fractured reflection, Daniel swore he saw her face again, watching from behind his shoulder. He spun, but nothing was there. Daniel sank into one of the broken chairs, journal in his lap, sweat cooling on his skin. He whispered, "I'm losing it." The pocket watch lay in his palm, its glow steady, not flickering but alive. He opened the journal again, reading the last line, "They keep her here." His chest tightened, and for a moment, he felt the weight of her hollow eyes again. Then the therapy room doors slammed shut behind him, the echo deafening. Daniel leapt to his feet, gripping the watch. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Who's here with me?" Silence answered. Daniel pressed his back against the therapy room wall, staring at the slammed door. His breath slowed, each exhale visible in the cold air. Suddenly, a voice whispered from the corner, calm but sharp, "You shouldn't have come here." Daniel spun, his eyes locking on a man leaning casually against the wall. He was tall, lean, wearing a weathered leather jacket, his gaze unreadable. Daniel demanded, "Who are you?" The man smirked faintly. "Someone who knows what this place does to people." Daniel tightened his grip on the pocket watch, unsure if the stranger was friend or foe. Daniel stepped cautiously closer, his voice shaking. "Why are you here?" Ethan's eyes flicked to the pocket watch. "Because you've touched what should have stayed buried. That thing will open doors better left sealed." Daniel's pulse raced, suspicion sharp in his chest. "You're lying," he muttered, though doubt gnawed at him. Ethan pushed off the wall, stepping into the weak light. His face revealed no fear, only knowledge. "I'm telling you the truth, and you'll see soon enough." A faint echo of laughter drifted down the corridor, chilling both men into silence. The laughter faded, leaving only creaking walls. Ethan glanced at the journal in Daniel's hand. "You've read their warnings." Daniel nodded reluctantly. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They keep her here. She's not gone, not completely." Daniel's jaw clenched, anger sparking beneath his fear. "Then tell me where." Ethan smirked, shaking his head. "Answers have a price." Daniel's breath hitched, the words dripping with manipulation. The asylum groaned, as though listening. Daniel whispered, "You're part of this, aren't you?" Ethan's silence spoke louder than any confession. Daniel stormed out of the therapy room, his footsteps echoing in fury, Ethan following calmly behind. "You can't just walk away," Ethan called, voice steady. Daniel snapped, "Watch me." The corridor stretched endlessly, doors yawning open to darkness. From one of them, a faint figure flickered. The same woman in the hospital gown, her hollow eyes fixed on him. Daniel froze, breath catching. Ethan's tone softened, almost persuasive. "She wants you to see, but she's tied to this place. You'll need me if you want the truth." Daniel's chest ached with the weight of choice. Daniel's voice cracked as he whispered, "I don't trust you." Ethan smirked, his words smooth as silk. "Good, you shouldn't. But trust isn't required, survival is." Daniel's hand tightened on the pocket watch, its glow stronger now, casting long shadows across the wall. The ghostly figure flickered once more before dissolving into the dark. Ethan leaned closer, voice low. "The asylum feeds on fear. Yours will keep it alive. But hers will guide you." Daniel's body trembled, trapped between mistrust and desperate need. He muttered, "Then show me." Daniel followed Ethan deeper into the asylum, each hallway stretching longer than the last. The air grew heavier, his chest tightening with every step. At the end of one corridor, a door stood ajar, light spilling through the crack. Inside, a frail old man sat on a stool, muttering to himself, chalk dust on his fingers as he scrawled strange symbols across the wall. His hair was wild, beard unkempt, but his eyes burned with frantic knowledge. Daniel whispered, "Who is he?" Ethan's expression stayed unreadable. The man turned sharply, grinning. "Finally. Someone else who listens to the walls." Daniel stepped cautiously into the room, clutching the pocket watch. The old man's voice rose, echoing against the crumbling plaster. "The asylum hums, can't you hear it? They whisper when you sleep." He cackled, slamming chalk against the wall, symbols breaking into shards of dust. Daniel's voice cracked. "What do they want?" The man's eyes widened, his grin vanishing. "They want her free." Ethan folded his arms, watching silently. Daniel's hand trembled on the watch, the old man's words striking too close to the journal's warnings. For a moment, Daniel feared the asylum itself breathed around them. The old man's grin returned as he shuffled closer, pointing at Daniel's hand. "Ah, the key. They gave it to you." Daniel recoiled, his breath ragged. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Careful with your words, old man." The eccentric insider laughed, spinning slowly, arms wide. "Careful? Nothing's careful here. The watch opens the door, but the door bites back." Daniel's chest pounded as he asked, "Where's the door?" The man leaned close, his whisper sharp as glass. "It's already open." A loud creak thundered through the hallway outside, like a giant unseen hand pushing against the walls. Suddenly, heavy boots echoed in the hall, sharp and authoritative. The door slammed open, and a man in a police uniform stood framed in shadow. His badge gleamed faintly, but his eyes carried exhaustion and guilt. Daniel froze as the man barked, "No one should be here." Ethan muttered under his breath, "He's still clinging to his post." The officer's gaze shifted from Ethan to Daniel, narrowing at the glowing pocket watch. His jaw tightened. "Put that down." Daniel shook his head, whispering, "You know what this is." The officer's silence was answer enough. The officer stepped fully into the room, his presence commanding yet fractured. "That watch destroyed lives. It belongs to this place." Daniel's chest tightened as he asked, "How do you know?" The officer's face hardened, his voice breaking, "Because I locked the doors myself, and I never stopped hearing them." Ethan smirked faintly at the confession, but Daniel's stomach dropped. The watch ticked once, louder than before, filling the room. The eccentric insider laughed wildly, clapping his hands. "The cracks widen, the truth bleeds." Daniel felt trapped between secrets, betrayal, and an asylum that seemed alive. Daniel followed the officer down a narrow stairwell, the air colder with each step, walls slick with damp. The eccentric insider muttered behind them, chalk-stained hands twitching. Ethan trailed quietly, his expression unreadable. The officer's voice cut through the silence. "This place feeds on the ones who linger." Daniel gripped the pocket watch, its glow casting sickly shadows on the walls. His breath quickened as the stairs ended in a long basement corridor, pipes rattling overhead. He whispered, "Feels like we're walking into its stomach." The officer didn't answer, but his jaw tightened, haunted by something unseen. The basement corridor stretched endlessly, lined with rusted pipes dripping water. The air carried a stench of rot, almost unbearable. Daniel whispered, "Why are we here?" The officer's eyes flicked to the shadows. "Because this is where they keep their silence." A flicker moved at the far end of the hall, a tall, thin man standing perfectly still, his face obscured by shadow. Daniel's chest constricted. Ethan muttered softly, "Finally." The man didn't move, only watched, his presence more suffocating than sound. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Who is he?" The officer whispered, "The one who never speaks." Daniel stepped forward cautiously, the silent observer unmoving, his eyes glinting faintly in the dim light. The eccentric insider laughed nervously, whispering, "He sees everything, but he says nothing." Daniel's hand trembled on the watch, its glow pulsing faster, as if reacting. Ethan spoke, his tone sharp. "Don't look too long. He'll show you what you don't want to know." Daniel forced himself to hold the man's gaze, his breath ragged. For a brief second, he saw flashes, patients screaming, chains rattling, doors slamming. His knees buckled as the vision seared his mind, then vanished. Daniel gasped, pressing his hand to the cold floor, sweat dripping down his face. "What did he show me?" he demanded, his voice breaking. Ethan knelt beside him, whispering, "The truth you've been avoiding." The officer's jaw clenched, his guilt spilling across his face. The eccentric insider clapped slowly, muttering, "He saw the chains." Daniel rose unsteadily, anger hardening his fear. He shouted toward the silent observer, "Tell me what you want." The man didn't move, didn't speak, only shifted his gaze toward the far wall, where a rusted iron door waited, its surface scarred with symbols. The group turned toward the iron door, its symbols identical to those on the pocket watch. The officer whispered, voice cracking, "I locked that door years ago." Ethan smirked faintly, murmuring, "And now it's his to open." Daniel's chest heaved as he raised the watch, its glow sensing with the carved lines. The symbols pulsed, responding to the light. The eccentric insider whispered frantically, "Once it opens, there's no closing it." Daniel's hand trembled, torn between terror and need. He whispered, "If this is the truth, I have to see it." The door groaned, metal straining. The iron door groaned louder, symbols burning with light as Daniel pressed the pocket watch forward. The officer shouted, "Stop! You don't know what's behind it." Ethan smirked, stepping back as though he had been waiting for this moment. The eccentric insider clapped wildly, muttering, "The crack's open, the crack's open." Daniel's breath quickened, torn between fear and inevitability. The silent observer remained still, his eyes locked on Daniel, unblinking. With one final surge of light, the door split open, dust exploding into the corridor. Beyond it, darkness swirled like a living storm, voices whispering in 1,000 tongues. Daniel staggered as the black storm poured from the doorway, the whispers growing into screams. He covered his ears, but the voices pierced through. Among them, the woman in the hospital gown appeared again, her hollow eyes fixed on him. She stepped forward from the darkness, her mouth trembling as though she tried to speak, but no words came. Daniel whispered, "Tell me what you want." She reached toward him, her hand passing through his chest like cold fire. His body convulsed, images flooding his mind, patience restrained, needles piercing skin, the asylum devouring its own. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping as the visions burned away. The woman's face lingered before fading into the storm. Ethan crouched beside him, voice low, "She's tied to this place. Free her, and it dies." Daniel's head snapped up, his voice breaking, "And if I don't?" Ethan's smirk deepened. "Then you die with it." The officer stepped forward, guilt weighing in his eyes. "He's lying. Freeing her won't end it, it will spread." Daniel's chest heaved, torn between conflicting truths. The eccentric insider shrieked with laughter, pointing at Daniel. "Only he can choose." Daniel rose shakily, clutching the pocket watch so tight it cut into his palm. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Enough!" The storm howled in response, shadows clawing against the walls. The silent observer stepped forward for the first time, eyes glowing faintly, and pointed at the pocket watch. The asylum itself seemed to shudder, plaster crumbling from the ceiling. Ethan called out, "Do it, Daniel," while the officer shouted, "Don't!" Daniel's heart thundered as he lifted the watch high, its light pulsing wildly. The woman's face reappeared in the storm, screaming without sound, begging for release. Daniel screamed as he hurled the pocket watch into the storm. Light exploded, flooding the corridor, shadows thrashing violently. The asylum shook, as if tearing itself apart. The ghostly woman's hollow eyes softened for an instant, her form dissolving into the light. Then silence. Dust hung in the air, and when it cleared, Daniel stood alone. The officer, Ethan, the insider, gone. Only the silent observer remained, watching from the shadows. He turned slowly, walking away into the dark, leaving Daniel trembling. On the floor, where the watch had vanished, new symbols burned faintly into the stone. They never left.